All right, so a question that comes up from time to time online, whether it be in sword forums or on the sword subreddit, a lot of people who are new to sword collecting or looking to be first-time buyers want to know what they're supposed to look for when they're looking to buy a sword. And that's a good idea. As a good consumer, you want to make sure that you are spending your money wisely. And there's a lot of misinformation out there. So I figured I would do this video, rather long and comprehensive video, to speak to some of the things that you should know about swords when you're going to buy them. Now this video is really going to be off the cuff. Usually I do scripted videos. This one is not so much, so there'll be a lot of me rambling. I do have notes here in hand so I can make sure that I stay on topic as best as possible. But because this is a long video, I got a few things I feel like I need to say in this introduction. First off, I will be focusing mostly on medieval European swords. That's obviously an interest of mine. Some of the things that I speak to will apply and can be applicable to Asian swords such as katanas, as well as Middle Eastern swords and the such. But really, my focus again, and you'll see that later on in the video, is European medieval. So I'm going to be speaking a lot to that. This is mostly going to be focused on production style swords, not really antiques. So this is kind of the more modern era when you're doing online shopping. Again, because it's a long video, I'm going to throw in a couple of good features. So over to the side here, I will be right about now throwing up a scene selection menu, so you can jump to the parts of the video that might be more interesting to you, or you can jump to them to refer to them later. So you can kind of skip past the parts you either already know or don't care to really learn about. Additionally, to make the point set in and also make this video a bit more interesting, in the second half I will be speaking to my own personal collection, which I think is a pretty common thing you'll see on people who have been collecting swords for a while but also learned from their mistakes. I have a lot of swords from a lot of different ranges in terms of quality, and so I will kind of show them and speak to them and speak to why they are good swords and why they aren't. And then, of course, be referring back to the things that I cover in the kind of introductory parts of this video. So this is really just a sword collector's guide, kind of 101, the really basic information you need to know as either a first-time buyer or someone who doesn't know a lot about swords yet. I hope that you'll walk away from this video knowing a whole lot more. So we will get started with kind of the first part, just introduction to swords in general. So one of the first things you need to know, being either a first-time sword buyer or if you're new to sword collecting, is that the rule caveat emptor really applies. That is, of course, buyer beware. And you as a consumer need to be very, very well versed in what makes a sword a good sword for whatever type of sword you're buying. Because there is a lot of misinformation out there, and a lot of that misinformation comes from both the manufacturer and the reseller of certain types of swords. And that applies especially to certain types of buzzwords. Good example of that being the term battle ready. Battle ready doesn't really mean much. In the sword community, it means that, hey, this is a sword that is a good sword, I can use it, and I'm not afraid of it breaking, I'm not afraid of it injuring me because of faulty construction or bad metal, etc. But as a term, it doesn't really mean anything within the industry in terms of resellers and manufacturers, because it doesn't necessarily mean that this sword has met any type of prerequisites or requirements. So they're able to just claim something as battle ready, and there's not really anything stopping them from doing that. So you have to be really, really careful when you see that term and understand what websites use it properly and what don't. And certainly if you're at either a Renaissance festival or a sword blade show or whatever, that you're aware that resellers might even use this term again there, and you just have to ignore that, start looking at the details of the sword that are important to know that they are actually truly battle ready and that they are good swords, well constructed swords. Real quickly on the topic of terminology, one of the common terms I will use throughout this video is SLO. It means sword-like object. It looks like a sword, but it's not really a sword, doesn't really meet the construction requirements. And I will use that interchangeably with the term wall hanger. So again, if I'm talking about a decorative only sword, not something you can expect to be able to use, I'll use either SLO or wall hanger.